In 4 years, something erased between 1/3 and 1/2 of everyone in Europe. It moved silently through ports and cities, and the people living through it could not agree on what was doing the killing, because they were looking at something they could never have seen. The first arrivals were unremarkable. Trading ships docked at Mediterranean ports. Goods changed hands. Sailors walked into crowded streets. But within weeks, bodies began accumulating faster than gravediggers could work. Physicians examined the dying and reached for the most sophisticated framework they possessed. Foul air, a corruption they called miasma, had risen from stagnant water and decaying matter to poison the atmosphere itself. It was the best explanation their entire intellectual world could produce. It was also completely wrong. 7 centuries later, scientists returned to the same question with a tool no medieval physician could have imagined. They could now read genetic code preserved inside human teeth. Researchers identified mass graves in London and across Europe, where plague victims had been buried in haste during the 14th century. From skeletons still resting in those emergency cemeteries, they extracted dental pulp, the soft tissue sealed inside each tooth like a biological time capsule. Inside each tooth, a record. Fragments of ancient bacterial DNA, preserved across 700 years. When those fragments were assembled, they produced something almost no one expected. A near-complete genome of Yersinia pestis, a bacterium still causing plague infections today. But the medieval version sat on its own branch of the bacterial family tree. A strain that flourished, killed on a continental scale, and then quietly faded from dominance. The organism's method was as elegant as it was invisible. It colonized the gut of fleas. Those fleas fed on rodents traveling in grain shipments along the same trade routes that connected Europe to the wider Mediterranean world. When rodent hosts died off, infected fleas sought new warmth and found human skin. A single bite delivered the bacteria directly into the bloodstream. The deepest irony is that medieval observers were almost right about one thing. The killer did travel through the medium surrounding them. Not through poisoned air, but through the unnoticed passage of tiny creatures living in every ship, every marketplace, every home. Fleas traveled with rats. Rats traveled with grain. And grain traveled with commerce. The most devastating biological catastrophe in recorded European history rode the same networks that carried silk, salt, and silver. The pathogen was everywhere because trade was everywhere. The Black Death reshaped European society at every structural level. Labor shortages doubled wages in some regions. Entire villages vanished from the map. Power shifted between workers and landholders in ways that would define the coming century. But its most lasting lesson may be quieter and more uncomfortable. A civilization can be intelligent, organized, and deeply motivated to understand a threat, and still remain blind to it if the right instruments do not yet exist. Miasma theory was not stupidity. It was rigorous reasoning operating inside an incomplete picture of reality. We live surrounded by things we cannot see. Not as metaphor, but as plain biological fact. The air in a crowded room. The surface of a shared cup. The warmth of someone sitting close beside us. The people of 14th century Europe were not less perceptive than we are. They lacked only the instruments to resolve what was already there, already moving, already killing. And that gap, between what is real and what is visible, remains the most humbling thing about being human.